Menachot 50a. Ravina replied, now this is starting with the previous 49b. Ravina replied, that is not difficult, because the Mishnah is saying that after he sacrificed the daily offering of the afternoon, there must be 6 inspected lambs. Okay, 50a. The Gemara asks, in any case, the question stands, why does the Mishnah say 6 lambs when in fact the number required is 7? The Gemara answers, rather the Tana is speaking generally, referring to how many inspected lambs are required throughout the year. And what did he mean by his statement, sufficient for Shabbat and for the 2 festival days of Rosh Hashanah? It is merely intended as a mnemonic to help one remember that there must be enough lambs for the daily offering of 3 days. According to this, the language of the Mishnah is also precise, as it teaches, sufficient for Shabbat and for the 2 festival days of Rosh Hashanah, and it does not teach that there must be 6 lambs for Shabbat and for the 2 festival days of Rosh Hashanah, which would have indicated that these lambs are meant to actually be sacrificed on those days. The Gemara concludes that, in fact, one can learn from the languages of the Mishnah that this is the correct interpretation. The Mishnah teaches, if the priest did not sacrifice a lamb in the morning as the daily offering, nevertheless, they should sacrifice a lamb in the afternoon as the daily offering. If they did not burn the half measure of incense in the morning, they should burn the half measure in the afternoon. Rabbi Shimon said, and in such a case the entire measure was sacrificed in the afternoon, as the daily service on a new golden altar is initiated only with the burning of the incense of the spices in the afternoon, at which time they would burn a full measure. The Gemara asks, who mentioned anything about the initiation of the temple vessels, i.e., what is its relevance to the Mishnah? The Gemara answers that the Mishnah is incomplete, and this is what it is teaching. If they did not sacrifice a lamb for the daily offering in the morning, they should not sacrifice a lamb in the afternoon. In what case is this statement said? It is said in a case where the service of a new altar had not yet been initiated, since it must first be initiated with the daily offering of the morning. But if the service of the altar had already been initiated, then they should sacrifice the lamb of the daily offering in the afternoon, even though they did not sacrifice the lamb of the morning offering. Rabbi Shimon said, when does this halakha apply? It applies at a time when the failure to sacrifice the daily morning offering was because they were prevented from sacrificing it due to circumstances beyond their control, or they failed to sacrifice it unwittingly. But if the priest acted intentionally and did not sacrifice a lamb in the morning as the daily offering, they should not sacrifice a lamb in the afternoon as the daily offering. By contrast, if they did not burn the half measure of incense in the morning, they should burn the half measure in the afternoon, regardless of the circumstances. The Gemara asks, from where are these matters derived? That if the lamb of the daily offering of the morning was not sacrificed, and the service of a new altar had not yet been initiated, then the lamb of the afternoon is also not sacrificed. The Gemara explains that it is derived as the sages taught in a Bereta. The one lamb you shall offer in the morning, and the second lamb you shall offer in the afternoon. Exodus 29:39. This verse teaches that the second lamb of the daily offering is sacrificed in the afternoon. But if it is the first one to be sacrificed, it may not be sacrificed in the afternoon. In what case is this statement said? It is said in a case where the service of a new altar had not yet been initiated, since it must first be initiated with the offering of the morning. When the verse refers to the first or second offering, it means the first or second offering ever sacrificed on the altar. But if the service of the altar had already been initiated, then even if it is the first to be sacrificed that day, it should be sacrificed in the afternoon. Rabbi Shimon said, when does this halakha apply? It applies at a time when the failure to sacrifice the daily morning offering was because they were prevented from sacrificing it due to circumstances beyond their control, or they failed to sacrifice it unwittingly. But if the priests acted intentionally and did not sacrifice a lamb in the morning as the daily offering, they should not sacrifice a lamb in the afternoon as the daily offering. By contrast, if they did not burn the half measure of incense in the morning, they should burn the half measure in the afternoon, regardless of the circumstances. The Gemara asks, does it make sense that because the priest sinned by intentionally failing to sacrifice the morning daily offering, the altar should be entirely idle? Rava said that this is what Rabbi Shimon is saying. They, the priests who deliberately failed to sacrifice the morning daily offering, should not sacrifice the afternoon daily offering, but other priests should sacrifice it. By contrast, if the priests acted intentionally and did not burn the incense in the morning, even those same priests may burn it in the afternoon. The reason for this is that since burning the incense is uncommon and causes those who do so to become wealthy, it is dear to the priests, and they will not be negligent in the performance of this rite. The Mishnah teaches that if they did not burn the half measure of incense in the morning, they should burn the half measure in the afternoon. Rabbi Shimon said, and in such a case the entire measure was sacrificed in the afternoon. The reason for the difference between the daily offerings and the incense is that the daily service on a new golden altar is initiated only with the burning of the incense of the spices of the afternoon, at which time they would burn a full measure. The Gemara asks, but isn't it taught in a Bereta, the service of a new golden altar is initiated with the burning of the incense of the spices of the morning? The Gemara answers, the question of whether the incense of the morning or the afternoon initiates the service of a new golden altar is a dispute between Tanaim. Tanaim. Abbé said, "It stands to reason that the halakha should be in accordance with the one who says that it was initiated with the incense of the spices of the afternoon, as it is written, with regard to the golden altar. Quote, and Aaron shall burn thereon incense of sweet spices every morning. When he dresses the lamps, he shall burn it. And when Aaron lights the lamps at dusk, he shall burn it, a perpetual incense before the Lord throughout your generations." Exodus chapter 30, verses 7 and 8. The fact that ashes are removed from the lamps of the candelabrum in the morning indicates that the lamps have been lit previously. Since if the priest had not performed the lighting of the lamps the previous evening, from where would the ashes be removed in the morning? This proves that the candelabrum must have been lit for the first time in the evening, since the verse states, "When Aaron lights the lamp at dusk, he shall burn it, a perpetual incense before the Lord." It must be that the incense was burned for the first time in the evening. The Gemara asks, and according to the one who says that the service of a new golden altar is initiated with the burning of the incense of the spices of the morning, from where is this halakha derived? The Gemara answers, he derives it from the initiation of the altar of the burnt offering, just as there. The service of a new altar of the burnt offering is initiated by means of the daily offering of the morning rather than the afternoon. So too here, the service of a new golden altar is initiated by means of the burning of the incense of the spices of the morning. The Mishnah teaches, and use of a new table was initiated only with the arrangement of the showbread on Shabbat. The Gemara asks, but does the Mishnah mean to indicate that if the showbread was placed on the table on a weekday, it is merely that the use of a new table is not initiated, but the showbread is sanctified? The halakha is that the showbread is sanctified only when it is placed on the table on Shabbat. The Gemara answers, the Mishnah teaches us this halakha itself, that the initiation of the use of a new table and the sanctification of the showbread when it is placed on the table occur only on Shabbat. This is as the Mishnah teaches in the latter clause with regard to the initiation of the use of a new candelabrum. And use of a new candelabrum was initiated only with the kindling of its 7 lamps in the afternoon. The Gemara cites another halakha relating to the burning of incense. The sages taught in a bereta, this is incense that was offered for an individual rather than the community on the external altar, and not on the golden altar as usual. And this was a provisional edict, permitted temporarily for that time only. The Gemara clarifies, to what case is the bereta referring? Rav Papa said, it is referring to the incense brought by the tribal princes at the inauguration of the tabernacle. See Numbers chapter 7. The Gemara asks, but with regard to the incense of an individual, Is it only on the external altar that it is not generally permitted to be burned, but an individual may sacrifice incense on the inner altar, as indicated by the Baraita? And furthermore, on the external altar, is it only an individual who may not sacrifice incense, but the community may sacrifice incense on the external altar? But isn't it taught in a Baraita contrary to these two inferences? One might have thought that an individual may voluntarily donate and bring incense similar to the incense brought by the tribal princes to the temple as a gift offering. And I will read with regard to this incense. As in the case of other gift offerings, that which has gone out of your lips you shall observe and do. Deuteronomy 23:24. Therefore, the verse states, concerning the inner altar, you shall bring no strange incense thereon. Exodus 30, verse 9. This indicates that an individual may not sacrifice incense even on the inner altar. One might have thought that only an individual may not bring a gift of incense on the inner altar, as an individual does not bring his obligatory offering similar to this gift of incense, i.e., since an individual is never obligated to sacrifice incense, he may not voluntarily sacrifice incense either. 50b, Menachot 50b. But a community may bring incense as a gift offering. Okay, so he may not voluntarily sacrifice incense either. But a community may bring incense as a gift offering, as the community does bring its obligatory offering similar to this, i.e., since the community is obligated to sacrifice incense, it can also voluntarily sacrifice incense. Therefore, the verse states, you shall not bring, that's lo ta'alu, strange incense thereon. Exodus 30, verse 9. The fact that the verse formulates the prohibition with the plural word ta'alu indicates that even the community may not sacrifice incense as a voluntary gift offering. The Baraita continues, one might have thought that the community may not bring a gift offering of incense on the inner altar, but it may bring incense on the external altar. Therefore, the verse states, and the anointing oil and the incense of sweet spices for the sacred place, according to all that I have commanded you shall they do. Exodus 31:11. This teaches that one has the right to do only that which is stated with regard to the matter, without deviation. Consequently, incense may be sacrificed only by the community, only when there is an obligation to sacrifice it, and it must be burned only on the inner altar. This contradicts the implication of the previously cited Baraita that it is permitted to burn the incense of an individual on the golden altar or the incense of a community on the outer altar. Rav Papa said, this is not problematic. The Baraita is speaking utilizing the style of it is not necessary, as follows. It is not necessary to state that the community may not sacrifice incense on the external altar, as we have not found a precedent for it. And similarly, it is not necessary to state that an individual may not sacrifice incense on the inner altar, as we have not found a precedence for it. But it is necessary to state that it is even prohibited for an individual to sacrifice incense on the external altar, despite the fact that we have ostensibly found a precedence for it in the case of the tribal princes, as that was a provisional edict and therefore cannot serve as a precedent. Mishnah, the 12 loaves of matzah prepared from 1/10 of an ephah of flour of the griddle cake offering of the high priest did not come from the house of the high priest in halves. Rather, the high priest brings from his house a complete 1/10 of an ephah of flour. See Leviticus 6:13. And divides it in half, and he sacrifices half in the morning and half in the afternoon. In the case of a high priest who brings in sacrifices half in the morning and dies, and they appointed another high priest in his stead, the replacement high priest should neither bring half of 1/10 of an ephah of flour from his house, nor sacrifice the remaining half of the 1/10 of an ephah of his predecessor. Rather, he brings from his house an entire 1/10 of an ephah and divides it in half, sacrifices half, and the other half is not sacrificed and is lost. Consequently, 2 halves of 1/10 of an ephah are sacrificed, 1/2 of what is brought by each priest, and the other 2 halves are lost. Gemara. The Gemara cites that which the sages taught in a Bereta, commenting on the verse. This is the offering of Aaron and of his sons, which they shall offer to the Lord on the day when he is anointed, the 10th part of an ephah of fine flour for a meal offering perpetually, half of it in the morning and half of it in the evening. Leviticus 6:13. If the verse had stated a meal offering perpetually, half in the morning and half in the evening, I would have said that the high priest brings half of 1/10 of an ephah in the morning and sacrifices it, and then he brings half of 1/10 of an ephah in the afternoon and sacrifices it. Since the verse states half of it in the morning and half of it in the evening, Leviticus 6:13, it teaches that he sacrifices half of a complete 1/10 of an ephah. How so? The high priest brings from his house a complete 1/10 of an ephah of fine flour and divides it in half and sacrifices half in the morning and half in the afternoon. In a case where the half of 1/10 of an ephah that was supposed to be offered in the afternoon became impure or was lost after the high priest sacrificed the first half in the morning, one might have thought that he should bring half of 1/10 of an ephah from his house and sacrifice it. Therefore, the verse states, half of it in the morning and half of it in the evening, which teaches that he brings half of a complete 1/10 of an ephah. How so? The high priest brings a complete 1/10 of an ephah of fine flour from his house and divides it in half. And he sacrifices half, and the other half is not sacrificed and is lost. Consequently, 2 halves of 1/10 of an ephah are sacrificed. The half that was sacrificed in the morning from the original 1/10 of an ephah, and the half of the replacement 1/10 of an ephah. and the other 2 halves are lost. In the case of a high priest who sacrificed half in the morning and died, and they appointed another high priest in his stead, one might have thought that the second high priest should bring half of a tenth of an ephah from his house and sacrificed it, or that he should sacrifice the remaining half of a tenth of an ephah of the first high priest. Therefore, the verse states, and half of it in the morning, and half of it in the evening. Therefore, the verse states, quote, and half of it in the evening, unquote, which teaches that he brings and sacrifices half of a complete tenth of an ephah. How so? The replacement high priest brings a complete tenth of an ephah of fine flour from his house and divides it in half. And he sacrifices half, and half is not sacrificed and is lost. Consequently, 2 halves of a tenth of an ephah are lost. Half of the tenth of an ephah brought by each priest, and the other 2 halves are sacrificed. With regard to the 2 halves of a tenth of an ephah that are lost, a Tana, i.e., a sage who recited Beretot, taught a Bereta before Rav Naaman, with regard to the half that was not sacrificed by the first high priest, who died, and the half brought but not sacrificed by the second high priest who replaced him. Their form should decay, i.e., they should be left overnight so they become disqualified, and then they should be brought out to the place designated for burning. Rav Naaman said to the Tana, granted, the half that was not sacrificed by the first high priest should be left overnight before it is burned, because it was initially fit for sacrifice before the high priest died. But with regard to the half that was not sacrificed by the second high priest, why must it be left overnight so that its form decays? It was brought to be lost from the outset, i.e., when the full tenth of an ephah was brought, it was known that only half would be sacrificed and half would be lost. Consequently, it is unnecessary to leave it overnight before burning it. Rav Naaman continued, who is the one who said this Bereta to you? It was the Tana of the school of Rabba bar Ava, who says, all disqualified offerings, even pigul, which is disqualified by Torah law, require decay of form before they are burned. Rav Ashi said, the Bereta can be understood even if you say it is in accordance with the opinion of the rabbis who disagree with Rabba bar Ava and hold that pigul does not require decay of form. Nevertheless, since at the time when the second high priest divides the 2 halves, if he wants, he can sacrifice this half, and if he wants, he can sacrifice that other half. Both halves are considered fit to be sacrificed and may not be burned until they are left overnight. The Gemara cites that which was stated further about the griddle cake offering. How are the griddle cake offerings of the high priest prepared? The verse seems to prescribe a variety of methods of preparation. Quote, on a griddle it shall be made with oil. When it is soaked, you you shall bring it in, and baked pieces, tuphenai, of the meal offering shall you sacrifice for a pleasing aroma to the Lord. That's Leviticus 6:14. Rabbi Haya bar Abba says that Rabbi Yohanan says that it is prepared in the following manner. The individual preparing it bakes it in an oven, and afterward he fries it in a pan. Rabbi Assi says that Rabbi Hanina says that it is prepared in the following manner. The individual preparing it fries it in a pan, and afterward he bakes it in an oven. Rabbi Haya bar Abba says, it stands to reason in accordance with my opinion, because the verse states, and baked pieces, tuphenai, of the meal offering. The word for baked pieces, tuphenai, should be understood as meaning that they shall be baked when they are still beautiful. Te'afina na'ah, i.e., before being fried. Rabbi Assi said, it stands to reason in accordance with my opinion, because the word tuphenai should be understood as meaning that they shall be baked when they are already partially cooked. Te'afina na, i.e., after being fried. This dispute between the Ammonaim is parallel to a dispute between Tanaim in a Bereta. The word for baked pieces, tuphenai, should be understood as meaning that they shall be baked when they are already partially cooked. Te'afina na. Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi says, it should be understood as meaning that they shall be baked when they are still beautiful. Te'afina na'ah. Rabbi Yosei says, the word tuphenai is plural, indicating that the pieces should be baked extensively, i.e., more than once. Consequently, Rabbi Yosei accepts the opinion that the pieces should be baked when they are already partially cooked, and he also accepts the opinion that they should be baked when they are beautiful. Therefore, the offering should first be baked, then fried, then baked again. We learned in a Mishnah elsewhere, 96a, concerning the 12 loaves of the high priest's griddle cake offering, of which 6 are sacrificed in the morning and 6 in the evening. Their kneading and forming of their loaves and their baking are performed inside the temple courtyard, and all labors involved in those actions override Shabbat. The Gemara asks, from where is this matter, i.e., that these actions override Shabbat, derived? Rav Huna said, the verse says tuphenai, meaning that when it is already baked, it must still be beautiful, te'afina na'ah, and if one would bake it yesterday on the eve of Shabbat, it would become swollen in Shifa and no longer beautiful. Rav Yosef objects to this. If the purpose of baking them on Shabbat is to ensure they remain fresh, say that the loaves should be baked before Shabbat and covered with greens to preserve them. The Gemara cites another explanation of why the preparation of these loaves overrides Shabbat. A sage from the school of Rabbi Yishmael taught, the verse states, on a griddle it shall be made with oil. Leviticus 6:14, which teaches that it shall be made under all circumstances, even on Shabbat. Similarly, the phrase shall be made teaches that it should be made even in a state of ritual impurity. Abbé said that there is a different explanation. The verse states, fine flour for a meal offering perpetually. Leviticus 6:13.